Good afternoon. So I've gone through now. Yesterday, actually, I finished all of your short responses and published those. So those grades are in. I've read some of the discussions. I'm going to go through and begin grading the discussions this afternoon over free speech, which I'll be honest with you is one of the things that I feel is most important in this class. In fact, as far as weeks go, last week I think might be one of the most important weeks. uh, just because I think civil rights and civil liberties are something that ought to be spent, a significant amount of time ought to be spent on those. Um, I will say a number of the short responses were not meeting expectations, let's say it that way. I didn't realize that there was no word requirement in the assignment. Um, and the reality is I don't count words on the short responses. Um, I'm fairly informal on those. Now, the assignment that you're going to do this week, which I'll talk about at the end of this video, this is your formal paper. It's very different, but I'm relatively informal, and I don't count words. I'm not going to sit there and I don't do the same thing on the discussions, right? I mean, the difference between a 199 word short response and a 200 word short response is nothing. That's half a percentage point. I'm not. That's not the purpose of it. That being said, I mean, I had more than one, unfortunately, more than one short response that was, 30 words. It was two sentences. You're not going to respond appropriately in two sentences. It's just not going to happen. And then there's a couple of other things that I just wanted to point out as we do this. I had a couple of people that misunderstood the difference between the court and a court. Interestingly enough, within the English language, capitalization matters. If you go back and look at the assignment, it said the court, and court has a capital C. There's a difference between capital C court and lowercase c court. Capital C court is the Supreme Court. Lowercase c court would be any court. And so some of you were talking about sort of criminal cases and lawyers being persuasive in a court, which is certainly not what the question was asking about. And I would certainly hope that guilt and innocence is not based upon whose lawyer is most charismatic. That would be a little alarming to me, but that's just me. Let's see. Next thing that I'll sort of point out, a number of you told me in your short responses, a lot of you, told me that dissent was important because dissent is what allows for I can't speak, for free speech. That is not accurate. You have that backwards. Free speech is what allows for dissent, not the other way around, right? If you do not have free speech, you cannot dissent, right? So, for instance, if you lived in a country, that did not allow for free speech, that did not allow you to voice opinions that are opposed to the government, you wouldn't be allowed to have protests or things of that nature, right? You wouldn't be allowed to present alternative ideas, right? So free speech is what allows dissent. Dissent does not allow free speech, right? And then the last thing that I'm going to say about the short responses is that there were far too many people just providing me a definition of what dissent is. Dissent is disagreement. Okay, but is that important? The question is, why is it important? In my actual classroom, I have a political cartoon. I love political cartoons. I use them all the time in my regular full semester courses. But it's a boardroom, and it's like the CEO of the board says, you know what we need is we need more dissenting opinions. And everybody at that board meeting goes, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. That's not a dissenting opinion. The purpose of dissent is ultimately what I want to get at, right? And I'm going to use a basketball analogy. And so, because a lot of y'all are young bucks, you're going to get mad at me for a minute. But Michael Jordan is far and away the greatest basketball player of all time. It is not actually even open for debate. Although obviously I'm a big fan of dissension. I like dissent. You can go ahead and tell me why LaFlop is number one, but you're wrong, right? That being said, Michael Jordan was a terrible, just absolutely atrocious NBA executive when he ran the Charlotte Hornets, and I think they were the Charlotte Bobcats originally, and then they went back to the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, they were terrible under Jordan. And the reason is because nobody dissented to Michael Jordan. That's actually the reason that they were terrible. Michael Jordan would be like, "Oh, we should draft Joe Phillips or whoever," and everybody in the room would be like, "Oh, well, that's what we should do. You're the greatest of all time. That's what we should do." Being a great player does not necessarily mean you're a great evaluator of other people's talent. And Jordan certainly was not. He's is not going to get credit there. But the problem then with so many of the short responses is you were providing me sort of a definition of what dissent was without explaining sort of the importance or the necessity of it. And the dissent, the very idea of dissent, is wildly significant. This is probably one of the few short responses that I would allow less than original thought on, right? So again, for the most part, the purpose of the response is to respond, to provide your thoughts and feelings and reasoning and logic and ideas about some topic. But the reality is, if you just sort of parroted some of Justice Breyer's ideas, I think he actually does a pretty good job of laying it out. I think he's one of the more articulate, easily understood justices that we've had on the court in the last few years. I think he actually speaks in a manner in which most people can understand and relate. So I actually probably would have allowed that because I think a lot of what he says really does hit home with what those key components and key ideas are. So that we're going to stop there on the dissent short response. I may come back and do another video later this week after I've finished all of the freedom of speech stuff, because I do think that's, well, the reality is I think freedom of speech is essential. I'm a big believer. In fact, it's just a little personal about me. I joined the Marine Corps back in 2000. So I actually served in the Marine Corps for 4 years. And I will adamantly defend anybody's right to say anything in America. And I will defend your right to be an absolute idiot and to sound like an absolute idiot. I'll defend your right to sound to be racist. It makes you a terrible human being. But the reality is, when you deny people speech, you actually give that speech more power. And so we'll see if I need to come back to that later in the week. But I do want to put a pin in all of that, because the real purpose of this video was to talk about your only assignment for this week. So this is the 1 week that sort of looks different than everything else. This is your formal essay. So it is 1,000 words. There is an example on D2L. So I will go ahead and tell you right now, your paper ought to look like my paper, right? Meaning that the formatting should be the same. Now, I call it Chicago style because it's Chicago style footnotes. I think I still call it Chicago style. I keep telling myself that I'm just going to change it and call it Baker style, but I can't wrap my head around being that just that arrogant to somehow believe that I deserve my own style. But this is what I tell my students, my dual credit students, when I teach them face to face. The reality is there's sort of 3 types of professors in college. The first type of professor is the guy who makes you buy some sort of writing guide or tells you that you need to be 100% accurate with what Purdue Owl is saying at any given moment. Those people are generally English teachers, and it's relatively annoying because sometimes they don't keep up with the changes and mark you down accordingly. The second type of professor would be the person who says, I don't care. I don't care what format you use. APA, MLA, I don't care. Be consistent, make it like understandable, we're good. The third type of professor is the one who provides you with an example and says, your paper should look like my paper. I am the third type of guy. And I'll be honest with you, the reason that I do it, I think there should be instructions. There might not be a video instruction. If there's not, I will double check. I have a video of instructions on how to format the paper correctly. And I'll see if I can find that and upload it if I did not. But I believe one of my jobs as a teacher, as an educator, is not just to sort of teach you content and knowledge about the topic that I'm teaching, but teach you sort of skills and things that could actually be applicable elsewhere. And so I actually wish I did not learn how to use footnotes until I was in grad school. And I wish somebody had taught me at a younger age how to do it and how to do it appropriately. Um, it's one of the reasons why your paper is 1,000 words instead of 2 pages, 3 pages, 5 pages, whatever. You can manipulate pages. Footnotes are a great way to manipulate page numbers, right? So if you do find yourself, when I was an undergrad at the University of North Carolina, I had to write a 25-page senior thesis to graduate with a degree in history from the University of North Carolina. If I had understood footnotes well, that 25-page paper could have been an 18-page paper and made my life significantly easier. And so I do want to sort of teach you some skills and tools and whatnot. All right, so that's the basics of the formatting. Here are the number one and number two things that will cause you to do very poorly on the essay, even if you did well on the essay. Right. Number one, you are writing a dissenting opinion. Okay, that means you need to find a Supreme Court case that you believe was decided incorrectly. Okay, so that means that the Supreme Court was wrong about some case. And the example paper is a dissenting opinion, right? It's a case, Reynolds versus the United States from 1867, which is a case about polygamy. And so if you want to read the paper and sort of see how I outline my process, you can do that. That I actually wrote that paper specifically to meet the requirements. No, not to meet all the requirements. We take that back. Specifically to model what this paper is supposed to look like. It does not meet the second requirement that is essential. Okay, that is that you must pick a case decided under the Roberts, Warren, Rehnquist, or Berger courts. That means that that case must be from 1953 or later, meaning more recently. Okay, so you cannot find me a case, and this is where Reynolds versus the United States falls apart. Reynolds versus U.S. was decided, I believe, in 1867, maybe. So you cannot do one of those cases. Next, you cannot do a case that has been overturned by another case, right? So, for instance, you could not write your dissenting opinion on Roe versus Wade because theoretically, Roe versus Wade's dissenting opinion is actually the majority opinion under Dobbs v. Jackson, right, which was the more recent Supreme Court case that got rid of a federal right to an abortion. Understand that. So those are the biggest things, right? Is that you're not writing a dissenting opinion, or you're not writing it on a case that actually meets the requirements, meaning time frame and not overturned. If you're unclear as to whether or not your case has been overturned, and I think it's actually even in the instructions. I tell you, email me what case you want to do, and I'll let you know. Obviously, I've had students do this assignment now for years and years and years, and so I have a number of different cases that if you ever do get stuck, if you find it's Thursday or Friday and you're still struggling drastically to come up with a case, then I can help you out. Hold on, one of my children needing me. One here. Tell mommy I'm recording a video and I'll be there in a minute. Okay. Sorry. My wife actually just had surgery, so well, I say just had surgery. She had surgery on her foot 5 days ago, so it's not like she's laying in bed dying. But I will try to wrap this up relatively quickly to go help her. So as I was saying, you need to make sure you meet those requirements of the case. If you're struggling at all, email me. Those of you that have emailed me, you have found, hopefully you have realized I tend to respond relatively quickly. Obviously this past weekend with the wife having had surgery and I actually, I had to work today. I've gotten a little further behind. I know that one of you asked me to reopen the test so you could see what you missed. One of you have emailed me about missing the test. I call it a test. I'm catching up with those things, so we should be fine. I do also want to go ahead and tell you now, because there will probably not be a video early next week like there has been. I actually leave Sunday for a 5-day conference over the Constitution at Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma up in Norman. So I will be less accessible next week than what I've been the past 2 weeks. But once you get this essay completed and submitted, we're significantly beyond 50% there in terms of what the class is and the requirements of the class and the expectations and all that. To this point, you've already taken one of the little assessments, quizzes, tests, whatever you want to call it. There's 10%. You did the political spectrum, that was 5%. So that's 15. And then you've done 2 discussions and 2 short responses. And I think those were 5% each as well. So that's like another 20%. This paper is 25%. It's one of the reasons why I have a love-hate relationship with the abbreviated courses. Goes quickly, you're able to knock it out fast. But I always do fear, I always do worry that I just don't teach you enough to really get you to be the educated voter that I would like for you to be. To have what I tell my face-to-face students are strong opinions loosely held, right? Opinions that you're adamant about, that you feel strong in, that you've tried to defend and can defend logically, intellectually, but then loosely held in the sense that you're capable of ingesting and processing new information as it arises and possibly changing your mind if necessary. So I do know that a couple of you have already emailed me about your papers. I have emailed those of you back. And so hopefully that's what we'll get done this week, and it will be relatively stress-free for you. I don't want to. 25% of your grade is a fairly substantial amount. I don't like ever going over that with any individual assignment. But it's, again, as you've noticed with a lot of how I grade, the idea here is not to detract or take away points or try to figure out how to not give you points. I'm never looking to do that. I'm never looking to penalize. But do realize that this is the one formal assignment that you will have in this class. And so it is the most structured and formal. And, now your short responses, I haven't taken off for grammatical issues or things like that. This is something that will occur with a formal essay. All right. So have a wonderful week. And if you need me, I'm just an email away. Thank you.